Thank you for being here to stay around to see my talk. Actually, it should. Or I can. Yeah. My name is Daan Lucas. I'm the managing director of Random Studio. We are based in Amsterdam. We're about 30 people, and we call ourselves Interactive Design Studio, Experience Design Studio. I don't really care so much about the name, but we work a lot with art and technology and design to create experiences. So today I would like to tell you a little bit about the studio, about how it started and why it started, and then also where we are right now and what I think is a strong move for the studio to move into. That move is actually really new, but I'm very enthusiastic about it, so I wanted to share it with you. But because it's new, I need you guys to imagine a little bit with me what this thing can be. But before I go into that, I need to take you back to 91, and this is I was still studying in Amsterdam, and I was studying law, and I had a lot of time, so I went out all the time, and it really was the best period of my life. There was this club called the Roxy. It was an old movie theater, and the guy on the right, Peter Giele, he bought it, he completely stripped it, and he turned it into a really, really amazing nightclub. And the Roxy is an acronym for the radical outlet for the xenomaniac in you. And the xenomaniac is someone who is always looking for the new, for the strange. And that was also what this club was. It was always pushing borders. It was changing the decors every single 6 weeks. There were really weird performances, sometimes good, sometimes not so good, but always pushing things. What happened there, because they were always pushing things, people started to stop being a visitor but become part of the space. And why? Because they weren't afraid to be judged. Because everything was possible. You could walk around naked, doesn't matter. Everything was possible. And at some point, what you feel then is that you can do anything and that you won't be judged upon it. And then what happens is that you're like, I'm starting to really connect with these people here because I'm not afraid to do anything anymore. I can do anything. And then that feeling that I got here, that feeling of not being afraid, making a connection with the people that are in this space, and also making a connection with the space itself, that freedom that I kind of forgot myself, that I kind of looked at the world in an open way, that was the feeling that always stuck with me. That was the feeling that this is why I'm showing you this. So then the club burned down. It was terrible, but it happened, and so I thought, look, I need to do something. So I started organizing parties myself, but I didn't make any money. And at some point, it's like, well, when I'm 29, I need to do something more serious. And then I started to design and code, and I really got a little bit into that realm. And then I went to these kind of a similar conference as this. In Barcelona, and there I saw a lot of people, because I'm 44 right now, so when I went to these festivals, the internet was relatively new, and all these technologies were also quite new, and these people came together here. You had designers, artists, a lot of different developers, open frameworks, you name it, and they started working together and making really new things, because the stuff that they were active in was new as it was. But then they started combining all these new ideas and perspectives and added art and design into it. And what I felt there was like, oh, this is not about ego. This is not about anyone becoming famous. These people are actually curious. And they're approaching each other in a very open way, sharing things and making new things. Like, wow, this is great. This feels a little bit like the Roxy. So this is this is what I'm going to do. This is it. It feels right. So I started a little studio with a couple of developers, and then I met these two guys at another festival. Yeah, and he's really like that. It's not like only dressing up like that. He's really like a strange mind, but interesting mind. And they were talking at a festival as well, and I started talking to them because I had been following his work for a while. And then he mentioned that he lived in Amsterdam. So we became friends. He moved into our office. And through them, I started to get into contact with a lot of artists and international clients. And I kind of got a name. I kind of built a name for the studio. Um, and we started to do things, like weird things. Jeff would do the design, and we would do the development and the animation. And this was for Valentine's Day, and it was called I Love You Like a Fat Lady Loves Apples. And, and it was an interactive thing. I mean, showing you a video now, but you had to grab the apple with your mouse, and if you couldn't reach it, this leg would come in, and she would eat and eat and eat and get really fat, and then she'd get a knife jammed in her back, and then she would deflate again. So silly stuff like that, but we were experimenting. And then we did this for Fornasetti, which is also an interactive microsite. Fornasetti is a very famous Italian designer from the last century, and he worked with these very basic tools, and the tools were the starting point for this experience. And it's also, you can play with it. So we did a bunch of these things, because Random is already 15 years now. So we did a lot of these small microsites. And then I met also through Jeff and Anita, I met this guy, Michael Pelletier. He had worked at the Band Center in Canada, and he had worked a lot with artists that were making interactive installations. And I never really knew about that. And he said, "Wow, that's pretty cool, because we can see how technology manifests itself in the physical space." So I was like, "Wow, that's great." So we started to experiment with that, and we wanted to make a physical installation using technology. So we made this one. It's very old, but it's still interesting to see the development, I think.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Lilleman, and I had the opportunity to work with Michael Pelletier and Random Studio to develop these mechanical cats. And the process started when Mike was doing research on these sort of kinetic systems that Theo Jansen had developed, making his wind beast strand sculptures. And the way these creatures moved was very interesting. And so we basically took those motions and did some mechanical tests, having the Adreno control these little motors and build these walk cycles. And from there, the first thing that came to mind was, wow, these things really have this quadped kind of movement to them. And so we took the approach of, giving it this aesthetic, which was these psychedelic cats that were all drawn in Illustrator. And then from there, the challenges, came up of like, all right, how do you draw this thing so that when it's cut out, it still works. It still works on the mechanic system that he had built. And so with some trial and error, we were able to make 12 of these things and laser cut them out, put them into the mechanical templates, and put it up on a window. In this case, we set it up in front of our studio and backlit it with projectors. And this gave this old feeling of like a nostalgic shadow puppet, something similar to Lotte Renegade when she was doing that in the 20s.
Not a lot of people were doing this yet. So we got a little bit of traction, and then we started doing physical installations for Nike. And then many years later, actually, once we were a little bit more developed in this realm, we started to work with these guys. And this was for KLM, and we made a marble installation. And this installation was supposed to show how passengers would move through the airport and in the plane. prototype in 3D, and then we made a plastic one, and then we made a physical one. We worked with a company that is close to our studio. And because there's so much steel, the pressure or the, yeah, I don't know how you call it actually, but the way the steel and the wood relate changes if you have more steel on the one side and then the other side, and then if it changes, then the marbles won't run anymore. So it was really, really difficult to make it, but in the end, we fixed it. So I'm going to show you one more installation, just to give you a little bit of an idea of what we are doing. And this one we did 2 years ago. This was for Apple when they released the watch, and they had a specific questions like, look, we are going to open up an Apple store in the corner of Selfridges, but we're also going to launch a watch. What we want to do is have moments where the windows are transparent. There's 4 windows. This is the corner window, and there's 4 on the other side, so 5 or 3 or 4. I don't remember. But the next amount of windows. Moments where you look through them, and there were moments where we want the window to be opaque apart from the orb, and the orb is that ball thing, so all the focus would be on the watch. So actually the solution for this was to make glass boxes and push smoke into it, obviously not into the orb, and then suck that smoke out every 15 minutes. So you would have times that it would be opaque and the focus would be on the watch, and vice versa. And we created these custom LEDs around it, so we could create animations in the color gradients, because these color gradients matched an element on the interface of the watch. So the documentation is pretty shit, but this gives you an idea of what it looked like. And it's good to see, because with the first couple of installations that we did, we make so many mistakes, Jesus, and we had to work nights and nights and nights to fix everything. And even here, we tested this through and through and through. But when you bring it, we brought these big glass boxes to London, and then the temperature and the air pressure were slightly different. So the smoke kind of left traces on the window, so we had to clean the windows every night. So making installations is I mean, with web stuff, you have the browser issues. With installations, you have other issues. But we've become quite a bit better at it now. And oh, actually, I lied. I have one more thing, but I'll go quick. This is for Louis Vuitton. We work with them. They have a heritage exhibition that travels around, and they always ask us, can you do something for us in the entrance? So they have a huge exhibition within a space, actually, and we created a facade, which is a 90 square meter LED screen. And when you enter the exhibition, this is like the entry space. When you go through there, you go into the exhibition. But yeah, the film will show what it does. We build everything in the Unreal Engine. So that means that that's a game engine. So all the assets that you see here are 3D assets, meaning that it's not playing a movie. We can continuously change the content. You will never look at the same thing. And we could also connect that to, for example, the weather outside or whatever variable you would want. And in the film you don't see it, but in the end installation we made a circle where people could step into. And when you would step into it, the plane would come to you a little bit, so you could make a visual connection, and then you could just steer it with your body. You could move, but also just move your upper body, and the plane would go with it. So yeah, this is where we are right now. We've been doing this for 15 years. I think we got to quite a solid state. We don't make as many mistakes, and also financially we're more stable. We are not in survival mode all the time, because that's pretty hardcore. But now we feel it's time to think about the next step. Where are we going to move this company to? And then when we were discussing this, like, okay, what was it that fascinated you so much about this place, this Roxy? And that was, like I said when I started the talk, it was about how this place facilitated a connection, a real connection between people, but also a connection between people and the club itself. And we're not going to start a nightclub now, but you get this feeling of connection. You can also have this when you go to a good exhibition at a museum. You know, when you walk out and you're very inspired by something that you've seen, and you walk out and you feel a little bit liberated. Do you recognize that at all? Because like, or maybe an artist made something that you think, like, why did he spend all his time making this? And then I think, oh, it's actually really good that someone makes a decision to spend a lot of time on something that I can totally not see the value. It's kind of liberating because it kind of puts you out of your own thoughts. It kind of liberates yourself from yourself. So I thought, okay, let's see how we, with our disciplines, we use a lot of technology, we try to use art as much as possible. How can we design experiences that exactly do that, create human connection? Oh, I have to sing. So before we made a decision on that, we did a bit of research, and we said, okay, what is the relationship between the advances in technology and human connection? Because what you see now is that we consume a lot of digital media, and we spend a lot of time in the virtual world. And how does that fact that is growing and growing relate to how we humans connect? And then you see that there's a lot of research on people that spend a lot of time on social media. They get sad, they get lonely. And the reason is that the connection that you get in social media is a simulated one. Although Facebook will say that they connect the world, actually they create simulated connections, which is very disappointing because they're not real. And what you also see is that the services that we use, say Spotify, they're all focused on efficiency. Back in the day, if you wanted to listen to some music, you go down to the record shop, buy a record, talk to the shop owner, he will probably say, that's not a very good choice, or maybe, yes, very good choice, at least you have a connection. But now you can just turn on Spotify on your phone and have music anywhere, anytime. Also, if you longing for some new music, you don't have to ask your friends or your family, whatever. You just the Spotify algorithm will tell you what your profile wants, and so on and so on. I mean, we're talking in 10 years' time, voice will be so big, we're talking more to Alexa than to your mother, you know. So I'm not judging this. I'm just seeing this is something that is happening, and there's obviously also tons of things happening that are really good. But we all recognize this as well. I mean, I have this app on my phone, a screen time app, and I do 2 hours every single day. I look at this thing, 2 hours, and then that's separated from the 6 or 7 or 8 hours that I look at my website or on my laptop. And then when I'm in the car with my wife, or I'm actually doing the dishes or creating some food, and she's in the other part of the house, and I feel that she's looking on her phone because she disappears in this black hole, and I was like, black hole, black hole. So, we really kind of disappear. It's so weird. And the thing is that the physical world, the real world that we have evolved in, where we all have been born in, that's actually the world that generates meaning for us. That's the world where we communicating, my posture, my position towards you, all of this stuff helps us actually to connect to each other. So I'm not opposed to technology. I love technology, but we do have to see how. If my goal is to make human connection using technology, then I have to acknowledge that these developments are happening. So we are thinking, let's focus on interactive space. And interactive space is actually the merging of the digital and the physical world. Let's see how we can bring that vivid digital culture that is instant, that is real time, that is captivating. How can we bring that into the physical space, the space that we all know and where we can connect? Because then, I think, and again, this is a relatively new idea where I feel very confident about, but I need to explore it. So I will tell you a few of the steps that we have already done to explore this domain. But what the promise of interactive space is that if we bring technology into a physical space, there are tons of options to facilitate the connection between people within this space, but also it could facilitate a connection between people and the space itself. Bear with me. I will explain it. This is difficult, I know. But again, it's new, but it's promising. Maybe after 10 minutes, you'll understand it better. So, again, technology in the physical space. How do I interact with the virtual world through a physical space? So we started to experiment a little bit with that. So think about human interfaces. This is the first project that we did where a physical object is the interface to the virtual world. So the ball has a reflective material. On top of the screen, we have an infrared camera. It projects down and it ricochets off the ball. And that's why we know where the ball is. But look at the kids. The kids understand ball. Ball is play. Ball bounces. Ball you can lift. See, this is stuff that immediately we know. This is another one where we worked for Nike, and they launched a new shoe, and that shoe was the Nike Free shoe, and it had a new technology. The sole had a new technology, and it was called the auxetic technology, and that's the little triangle thing. And the promise was that it would not only adjust to your foot, but also to the ground. So if you'd be running, it'd be very comfortable. But because it was such a tactile technique, we also wanted to explain it in a tactile way. So this is a big fixture, and on this fixture we put a piece of fabric. Behind the fabric there's a projector and a Microsoft Kinect. So when you push this thing like he's doing right now, we can measure how deep you push it. And then we know how to change the visualizations accordingly. So you actually feel the technology. And another project that we did was called Body. It was for an interactive kids festival, and they asked us to do an installation. And the idea was to use the body as an interface to a virtual layer. And what we did was we used the Kinect, and the Kinect has joints tracking, so you can really see how you move your bones, your skeleton. And if you can read how your skeleton is moving, you can deduct posture. If you know the posture of someone, then you can grab that posture and connect it to a database of images with images that have the same posture. So if I would do this, then we would match it with, for example, like a weightlifter or something. But the video will show you a little bit. See, we can see in every image what the posture is. And here's the installation, and the documentation is a bit but we're not completely done yet with it. But so it was an installation, and this guy is in the installation, and he's looking at the big screen. We see his skeleton, and then we match his posture with imagery, and we build a huge database, and with machine learning, we identified all the postures from the database, and then we could match them. So there were 3 examples how we can use the physical world to interact with the virtual world. But what is also super interesting, I think, is, and this is a step further again, is that how can a physical space become alive? How can we give it a bit of a soul? And so you can relate to a building more than you can do now, because it's a static, lifeless thing to a certain extent. And I want to explain this a little bit better by showing you two short videos that do not talk about spaces, but it's easy to translate their thinking to a space.
Paro is a therapeutic robot developed by ICE and available from Intelligent System Corporation. Paro, modelled on a baby harp seal, displays emotional responses to external stimuli, which are input via a range of tactile, light, audio, and temperature sensors. Paro is designed to have a positive psychological effect on people who interact with it.
Yeah, so they call this a care robot. But if you deduct it, it's hardware, electronics, and a bit of fur, right? But somehow, with adding a bit of emotion and sound and movement, and obviously it's very cuddly, but also the need for people to take care of it, it becomes a companion, it becomes a pet. It's against loneliness, and it really works well. So if you translate that to a building, how can for example, maybe not a building, let's go, I ride a lot of cycles. I live a little bit outside of Amsterdam, so I cycle a lot. And every day I have this cycle, I have it for 15 years. And I love that cycle. So when I see it, it's like, hey, how you doing? And thanks for not having a flat tire. And thank you for bringing me my work again. You know, and people have that with cars as well. And this is something that humans do naturally anyway, to give human traits to physical objects. But what would happen if you, for example, I approach my bike and it sees me and it rings, ding, 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 ding. Or I say something nice and it warms up a little bit. You know, you can think about this stuff. This is new, but I'm just trying to explain. One more example of Ian Cheng. He has an exposition in the Serpentine Gallery right now, and he made an artwork that is sentient. And sentient also means that it has its own agency, its own. It can also kind of make its own choices.
In simulations, when I felt a deep desire to see art that had a sense of aliveness and that could change over time and be a bit more out of control in terms of its authorship for me. More and more, I've come to feel that I want to make art with a nervous system. And by that I mean art that can react and learn on its own and can react to you or me as a viewer. And I think art with a nervous system starts to become something that feels sentient, that has its own agency, and you would forgive it for not behaving. We expect art in a museum or an institution to behave perfectly as planned to the perfection of the artist. And I'm trying to both adapt myself as personally and my work to be more pliable or adaptable to change. And I figured by trying to make an artwork that can change and hopefully change on its own, that you would have a relationship to it the way that you have a relationship to a pet or to a cousin or to any other living creature.
Yeah, so again, an example. I mean, I don't know if I would like a pet like that, but you can imagine that a space can have its own agency. It's a nice word, agency, where it can react to you. And then maybe a friend of mine and I were thinking about maybe we create lights in a space, and when you come home, it's flickering like a little dog is wagging its tail. You know, it's happy that you're there. And maybe when it's tired, it can slowly breathe. Like the lights go up and down. You know, we're still exploring things. What we're doing right now in the studio is because it's also new for us. We're building an infrastructure for interactive space, meaning that we're kind of looking at the space as a space where we're trying to embed all the technology within it without seeing it. And then we can add behavior to the space. So I will explain to you a little bit what we're doing right now. And we first started out with a light system. You see those, okay, look, those things here. Those are aluminum beams, and we made them ourselves. And they go all across the studio. You see them, they're in real life. Like those things here, and they go here, and they're actually all over this place. And we have a 475 square meter studio, so it's quite a stretch. and we had them actually extruded from aluminum, and we made the electronics ourselves, and then we put, I think, around 1,000 LEDs, and we put 2 LEDs next to each other, a warm light one and a cold light one, so you can play with the warmth of the light and then play with time in that sense. I'll explain that later. We also, apart from the hardware, we also created software together with the company that's next to us, and this software shapes the space where you're making the experience for in 3D, and that 3D model becomes the interface to whatever you want to do. This software allows you to grab any input and connect it to an output. So, for example, I would put a rain sensor on the roof. It can measure that it rains, and then the lights can go tick, 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 for example. Thank you. There's all kinds of things that you can do to connect an actuator with an output. And here you can see that the 3D model is controlling all the LEDs. And next to that, we put in that sound system, and that's actually a spatial sound system. So we have these speakers everywhere in the studio, and it's based on, it's called a 4D sound system, and basically it's creating an architecture of sound. So these boxes, they show where the sound is moving towards, but also where the sound is limited. In this software, you could, for example, build a virtual wall here, and the speaker would send a sound, and around here the sound would stop. So for us, it would be really interesting to link the sound to the light, and then you can do, for example, so you know, it sounds a bit cheesy now, but if you come up with concepts like we have, I'll show you. This is the first thing that we have made. We call it the Indoor Sun Project. The studio is based in within a group of high houses. So in summer, in the winter, the sun is obviously low, and we don't get any direct sunlight, which means like for 6 or 7 months, the light is super flat. And when it does that, you kind of lose the sense of time, because the traveling of the sun obviously gives you a sense of time. So what we did is we took the coordinates of the sun, also the color temperature of the sun, and we let it travel through the space. So when in the morning the light goes on, and it is very orangey, like the light of the sunrise. It's very orangey, and like the big ball of the sun. So the light will be on, but like an enhancement of light will travel slowly through the space, and also the color of the light will change. As the day progresses, the color of the light will become a little bit more cold, as it is in real life as well. And we thought that'd be nice, because then you make a connection between the inside and the outside, and you bring back a sense of time and a sense of life. So here are some more images where you see that the colors are different. You also see here. Yeah, you see. So, last slide, right on time. You can feel that we are just starting, right? I mean, the documentations aren't done. It's all a bit guessing and trying and everything. But I do feel that if we manage to bring the technology and all the possibilities and the joy and that come with it into the physical space, we kind of use best of both worlds. What that exactly means, I have a gut feel that it could be super, super interesting. And we have been trying a few things already, but we still need to explore this. And it's been a long time that I've felt so excited. So I wanted to share it with you, although it's not completely done. But I think if we get this done, maybe in a couple of years I'll talk here again, and then I'll show you that we can dance with the bits and the bytes. Thank you.
Thank you. I once actually had the pleasure to be at the Roxy when it was still there.
Yeah?
And it is a very weird place. I totally...
It's only advantage of being old.
Yeah, there were some connections there. Weird space, I can tell. Well, thank you. Amazing work. And I especially like that you show stuff that is still
in progress.
In progress. That's so important to share that with other people, that we are like muddling around trying to do something that is not only the finished stuff that counts. There's a question. I was very nasty. I saw on Facebook or somewhere else someone was complaining that I was complaining. So I love you. Just because you're here, I love you. Even if you don't ask any questions. There's one.
Hi, Dan. Thank you very much for the things. Could you imagine we have co-working spaces coming up more and more? And so over the day you have a group of people which are moving in different groups, so it becomes loud and silent, loud and silent. And it could be very helpful if the room changes dynamically to the situation of the people within the room. So we have very often the problem, we want to interact, but we also want to have it quiet. Is there any imagination you have for that?
No, but
He's not so much about quiet, but
when you ask the question, you already have the answer a little bit as well, most likely. But you could probably when things are too loud, maybe you can play with toning down the music, or maybe toning down the sound. Maybe you can have stimuli in the room to make it more calm. And maybe there's someone like, shh. I don't know. You look, this is quite new for us, but we are now making cases for what if you put this vision into retail. What do you do in hospitality? How can a museum exhibition look like if you start playing with this idea, which is a very broad idea, I know. But hopefully that answer was a little bit what you were expecting.
There's one.
You were introduced as conducting social experiments on your employees.
Well, I read that somewhere that he was doing this.
I'm curious what's happened in your office. The one photo showed like the lighting overhead, and then a guy sitting there with a baseball cap and headphones. So how are the employees actually reacting?
Right now, it's actually quite comfortable because it's indirect light. It feels like the sun is shining most of the time. But it is an interesting question because a lot of, we are more from the theatrical aspect. I like to see us more as a tech theater. But there's a lot of architects right now concerned about the well-being of employees. Obviously, if you have someone who is feeling good, he will be more productive and he will be less sick and la 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 la. Offer a better working environment. So these ideas of what kind of light, what's the warmth of the light, how can you make people move more, all these things are super relevant from that perspective. How might people react? I think they just like it that we're trying stuff, It's like, oh, wow, what is this thing? And it gives it's good for the culture. Because you need to try things. And I think Matthew also said that making things is super important because you can't always think about things. You need to make it, and you say, ooh, this doesn't work, or maybe you need to go there. So it's good to show that we have initiative. Not really what you asked for, but it's a second answer.
Best answers, probably. One more question from the audience. I think here, I see a hand.
Hey Dan,
Hi.
First of all, this was such an inspiring speech. Thank you so much. And yeah, my question is, do you take certain time for inspiration? Like, is there one day a week or something you're gathering new insights, or do you just collect it day by day, just on the side?
No, I mean, I should, but I don't do it enough. But I do totally see the importance of that, because every time you do, you always, even here it's not a museum or anything, but I learned so much from the earlier speeches, talks that I saw. It's that's what I always tell myself I should have one day where I get inspired. I think for everyone this is very important. And another thing that I should do, if you run a studio, focus on talent. Find not only clients but also people that are doing interesting stuff that works for you. And I also don't do that enough. It's difficult to manage your time. For me, it's difficult. But it's definitely good advice.
Well, there is a section on your website, I think it's called FF, Fast Forward.
Yeah.
And I like that because all other people do that on Instagram or somewhere else. You post stuff that you find somewhere that you find inspiring, but you put it on your website. I really love that. It's so simple. And great stuff up there as well. So if you need inspiration, go on their website. So thanks a lot. It was really inspiring. Daan Lucas from Amsterdam.